Sri Rama Rama Ramati Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Varanani. I delight in the beautiful name of Sri Rama again and again, for even once remembered, the name of Sri Rama bestows the fruit that is equal to the 1,000 names of the Lord Vishnu. Well, we have had a lapse of a few weeks probably since we last took up the story of Ram. So it requires a little bit of repeating on what went before. You'll recall that the King Ram has brought two talented young people, two talented young boys, into the assembly, inquiring about their origin and what have you. And that is Kush and Lava. These are his own sons, but he doesn't know them, he doesn't recognize them. It is a great point of contention that Rama has abandoned, if you will, that's how it seems, Sita in the forest, lending, perhaps in some people's view, the endorsement or the perception that maybe the citizens who were gossiping were correct. But then you see, if you look at it another way, we have no idea, except for some references, few references here and there from Valmiki, about the great social upheaval in the kingdom, where a kind of trend was taking place in many families, where there could be husbands or wives going astray and coming back, and all is well. So this example of infidelity was corrected, even though it was only a perception. And Rama openly stated, look, Sita is blameless, unblemished. However, if we have to correct the social model, then let's do it. Now, this is in contrast to modern times, where leaders of significant countries behave in certain ways and nobody worries about the model of their behavior, or do they? They may say they don't, but unconsciously, when you're setting an example to children and to other people, then following certain standards and norms of the day, we find that it is maybe out of step with what we feel inwardly. So it is quite a complex issue. And Rama, understanding this, took this extraordinary measure. But as we know, he had this Ashwamedha, a situation where a horse, a black horse, was allowed to roam wherever it will. It was followed, and whatever land it covered, the horse covered, unchallenged, this would be claimed by the emperor. That was the tradition in those days. So, in Ayodhya, we have to understand that subjects complained that the king, Rajaram, had set a bad example in morality by harboring what they viewed as a tainted wife. They didn't have the advantage of understanding what were the difficulties or what were the challenges, and also how Sita walked through the fire, absolutely proving her untainted purity. And the accusation really was that you chose to defend Sita. And who knows? Now, gossip is such a dangerous thing. My grandfather, I think I mentioned several times before, was a wise man. He said, never believe what you hear and only half believe what you see. And chapter 6 of the Benedictine rule will tell us, as monks, that the worst thing we could possibly do is entertain gossip. because naturally some of what is there will be true and some will not be true. And this mixture overall will be it's not true. So anyway, though through conceding to the views of the subjects, Rama gained several merits as a king. And the difficult situation is that a model king subordinates his family interests to public issues. I'll give you an example in more modern times, King Charles. King Charles is known, King Charles III, current monarch in England, is known for his very liberal views on religious affairs. And yet, in his first speech to his nation, he chose to call himself defender of the faith, namely the Church of England. And so upholding a tradition that is unambiguous, even though his personal views may be a little different. So if the abandonment of a suspected chaste wife, promotes public morality, then the king must be prepared to make that sacrifice. And so in this way, Rama proved himself to be, apart from a model husband as he was, a model son, he's also now a model ruler. So that's his first gain as a king. And women should not be lifelong dependent on a man, not even in those days and not even in these days. She should sometimes become self-dependent, independent. And so the second prophet was really for Sita's sake as well. And then the disciplined life at the ashram produced two children of obvious character and purity. The life in Ayodhya and the royal palace would have been a hindrance to this. So we can see merits, even though, humanly speaking, we may not be able to fully understand the action. But now you see, Valmiki has been asked to call the mother of these two children. He says, now I call upon my spiritual daughter, Sita, to come to this assembly and present her case. It's like a legal thing. Finally. And so Sita appears not attired in white or royal robes, but attired in the oaken robe befitting an ascetic, as she was in the forest. And so with her eyes introverted, she gently moves forward, and now she gives her address. She says, I come of Mother Earth, don't forget, if you remember the beginning of the story, Sita, that means one born from a furrow. Now there's enormous significance in this. A person born from Mother Earth. In other words, Mother Nature herself expressed in all her complexity and all her glory. I come of Mother Earth, she says, and she is ever witness to my purity. Just simply on account of that. Wedded that I am, she says to Rama, I have my whole being fixed in him forever. A model wife. Both in weal and woe, in crisis, in good times, in bad times. When Sister Nivedita repeated the Western or Christian wedding vows to Holy Mother was enraptured and joyful. For better or worse, richer or poorer. In other words, in all circumstances, there's a loyalty there. She says, so I took the hermitage with my Lord in Dandaka, the forest. She didn't have to, And calmly I shared his hardship. And it was an accident I fell captive to Rava. It was not my design. But that mishap strengthened my devotion to Rama. After rescuing me from the grips of that demon Ravana, my Lord was very stern with me. He didn't embrace me as I would have expected. But that didn't affect my devotion to him. And then the deity of fire, Agni itself, refused to consume me in Lanka. I went through an ordeal as proof of my purity. That was a public statement, but the citizenry of Ayodhya never witnessed it. Now the people of Ayodhya suspect my purity. You see, that's their problem. In order to set an example to them as a model king, my Lord was obliged to abandon me in pregnancy. I could have, by sheer will, disintegrated my body, but because my Lord had implanted his seed into my womb, I didn't have the freedom to tamper with it. Faithfully, I fostered it with spiritual food, graciously imparted by the Kulapati, namely Valmiki. You see, all of this is not just morality and ethics, it's the highest noble spiritual values we can think of. Faithfully, I fostered, she says, with the spiritual food. You see, when we put ourselves in holy company, in a holy environment, it's equivalent to receiving prasad, spiritual food. COVID had its negative effect on people coming here to the ashram. Same thing with many other institutions. Not realizing perhaps that a visit to a holy place and people dwelling there is like a spiritual food that has to keep the soul going. I think it was St. Augustine who interpreted the Pater Noster of Christianity, the Our Father. Give us this day our daily bread. He argued it cannot be bread to eat because the Lord has said, previously, if the lilies of the field are clothed and the birds of the air are fed. Clearly, it's not physical food. Well, then what else can it be? It must be spiritual food. That was his conclusion. She continues, in this world of weal and woe, a great share of woe has fallen to my lot. We all complain, but nobody abducted us. Nobody forced us into a rough, homeless state. For the most part, everyone has shelter, clothing, food. She says, I have accepted all of these things calmly. This is what we should all be doing. I blame nobody for it. It's because of me my Lord had to encounter endless miseries in the hermitage and face problems in life in Ayodhya. And still, my husband has been uniformly kind to me, and that has given me the strength to endure all ordeals. And imagine, do you think Rama was happy to make this decision about Sita? Not at all. He also was suffering, but rose above it as well. She says, I have had the greatest ordeal in bringing up these two children, that is Kush and Love. I was not to reveal to them by their origin. I had kept it as a secret all this time. I wasn't to divulge my name to them. They only called me mother and knew me as mother. And day by day, taught by our Kulapati, these boys chanted the glory of Rama and Sita. But they don't know they chanted the glory of their parents. And in this respect, they were brought up pretty much as orphans. They didn't know who their mother really was, the story, the history, and yet they were singing the song. And they absolutely never knew who their father was, thinking that maybe Valmiki, that's all they know as a father figure. And so they were brought up, as I said before, as orphans. That situation pierced my heart to the core. And still I kept the pang concealed to myself. My darlings Kusha and Lava, so long you have known me only as mother. Now she addresses them. Now in this assembly I reveal to you I am Sita. The august person who presides in this assembly is Rama, your father. Until now you have been nurtured by me, but hereafter your father, he's going to take charge of you. The blessedness of being simultaneously with mother and father is not yours, however. May you both fare well. And to Valmiki, Father Kulapati, by your grace, I have realized Ayodhya Ram as my Atma Ram. What a significant statement. This realization that this Ayodhya Ram, the person I married in Ayodhya, is actually the Atma Ram. That is the Lord of the universe pervading everywhere. I have nothing greater than this to gain. I pay homage to you. O Lord of my being, I realize you in me and me in you. This is the height of spiritual life in marriage. Our relationship is eternal. Through this body assumed by me, my service to you and your progeny is complete now. I dissolve this body and its original state. I dissolve it. Voluntarily, I dissolve it. Mother Earth, you gave a form to me. You see, we have that saying, from dust to dust. We're all coming from Mother Earth, in a sense. I have made use of it, as I ought to. Now, in recognition of its purity, may you kindly absorb it into your womb. The final demonstration of my purity, she says, you see, is I'm going back to my origin, physically, but also spiritually. And Sita now became a mass of radiance and disappeared into the earth. Rama witnesses this and is puzzled. And he doesn't know for the first time, he doesn't know what to do. And Valmiki clarifies the position. Rama, you see, those that meet must also part. It's a lesson to all of us. And Sita determined her part splendidly, her part as if it's a part in a play. Absorb Kusha and Lava into the household. You and your brothers may now arrange to quit this world, if you will. Your play here being over, your actors on a stage, you now end the drama by one going, and Sita has set the example. And actually, the first to go was Ravana in the overall stage, so the first significant character. And the mothers, Kaushalya, well, of course, even before that, you see, Dasaratha was the first actually to go. But you see, one by one, the actors will, having played their part, take a bow on the stage and leave. The mothers Kaushalya, Sumitra, Kaikeyi had completed their earthly career, and in time, as time goes on, one after another dropped the mortal coil, departed to the region beyond to join the king Dasaratha. Bharata and Lakshmana, they had two sons. Suitable regions were annexed and kingdoms established for their reign, another reason why the kingdom had to be expanded. So that's kind of the end of a certain section of this, a significant section. We now have to see what was the exit circumstances for the other characters. So one day, An ascetic made his appearance in the palace, and he asked for an interview with Rama. And in response to his request, Lakshmana escorts the holy man into the presence of his eldest brother. And the ascetic addresses Rama. He says, Rama, I have something very, very personal and private to talk with you. And so while we are talking and discussing, and while I'm telling you this, because of the privacy of this nature, no third person, no other person should hear our conversation. It's completely confidential between us. Nobody at all should come before us. So please, you give me your word that you will inflict death or the capital punishment on the person who violates this injunction. If somebody bursts in, immediately they are pronounced dead. So this whole thing must be announced, well announced, so nobody comes and interrupts. And Rama gives his assurance that the condition would be fulfilled. And he tells his brother Lakshmana to keep rigid watch at the entrance and don't allow anybody to come in. Now Rama and the ascetic were left to themselves in the throne room. And the ascetic started saying, I am Yam. Now, Yama is the messenger, the deity of death. I've come for collection. I'm deputed to you, by Brahma, the creator. Brahma is the cosmic creative mind. And so everything that comes after that, the creator, namely the creation itself, is all subject to this Brahma. Now, Brahma's message to you is that your earthly exploits are over. Your advent has been eventful. You have successfully revealed Dharma to the world. Just to remind you, Dharma, the thing that holds, that binds, that keeps things knitted together in harmony, this is called Dharma. The time has come for your return to the original state. Now, while this conversation is going on, Lakshmana had a problem. Because at that very moment, Durvasa Maharshi, the embodiment of anger and destructive forebodings, suddenly came over there and wanted to see Rama immediately. Now, why is this such a dilemma? Well, Lakshmana says, look, Venerable One, please wait for a while. Rama is just now otherwise engaged. But Durvasa Maharshi says, how dare you ask me to wait? Bring Rama here this moment. Otherwise, I will spell destruction of the entire Raghu family and its empire. It is very common to see these great rishis and maharshis feign anger. And of course, being dedicated to truth, a single word from them, a curse, carries through to the end event. So that's the problem. If he says there will be destruction of your entire family and your entire empire, you would want to be worried. You know the key to the science of this. Anyway, so Lakshmana has to think. And his thought goes along these lines. I wonder, it's better that I die instead of inviting damnation on the whole family. One person sacrificing better than the destruction of the whole family. So what he does is he rushes into the presence of Rama and submits that the sage Durvasa wants to see him just then. And Rama dispatched the envoy hastily to meet Durvasa and pleaded that he was at the disposal of the venerable visitor. But Durvasa said that he had broken his prolonged austerity and that he was in pinching hunger. This was the reason for his visit. So he wanted to partake of the very food prepared just then for Rama. Now the visitor's will was piously fulfilled. He pronounced his benediction and departed. Everything satisfied. And you see, in Hindu culture, even today, there are 5 sacred things that every householder should do. And one is to look after holy people, sadhus, people who are renunciants. And so he was doing his great duty in doing this. You may wonder what the others are. Well, we have an obligation to ancestors. We have an obligation to the elemental forces of nature, the divine graces of nature. In other words, God worship. We have an obligation toward all the beasts, all the beings, birds, animals, and so on, trees and plants. We have an obligation to suffering humanity as well, giving alms, for example, and so on. We have an obligation to whoever is in your realm to look after, family, in other words, and so on. So like that, there are a number of things. And holy people, you have an obligation to do that. So Durvasa said he had broken this austerity and he was pinching hunger. That hunger had been satisfied. And now that the visitor's will was piously fulfilled, he pronounced benediction, he departed. And now Rama was to mete out capital punishment to Lakshmana. That was his promise, and he dedicated to truth. So he calls a council of the elders and consults them. It's a very wise thing to do. So although there's an autocracy going on, it is not a dictatorship. The verdict of the council was in favor of being true to one's commitment. And Rama was to kill Lakshmana. Was it possible? Then he thought calmly for a while, and he declared, you see, there's always an alternative. Lakshmana, I banish you from this country. Among the enlightened, this punishment was considered, of course, equivalent to capital punishment. And the dutiful Rama had to drink this bitter, bitter cup. And he did it. And so the condemned Lakshmana didn't go to his palace. Instead, he walks straight to the bank of the river Sarayu. And there he sits in meditation and drops the body and returns to the original state. He who ever followed Rama on earth departed ahead of him and forced by circumstances. You see, earthly life is not at all perfection and blessedness. It has tragic offshoots. The hero is not affected by such eventualities. The hero calmly accepts them and uses them to assert his strength, what we might call manliness, not in a gender sense, but in a strength sense. Now, Kusha and Lava were crowned kings of the 2 regions belonging to Ayodhya. And similarly, Shatrughna crowned his own 2 sons as kings of regions belonging to Madhupuri. And then he hastens to Ayodhya to join Rama. Sugriva had crowned Angada the king of Kishkinda, and everywhere the younger generation had been entrusted with the responsibility of ruling the earth to the best of its ability. This is what happens. We should not cling on. We give it to the next generation with a sense of faith and trust, because they're all noble characters, because of their training. Now Rama's devotees instinctively felt drawn towards their chosen deity Rama. And Bharata and Shatrughna were already by his side, inseparably united anyway. The pious people of Ayodhya, they plead that they should not be left behind if they are all going to depart. And their Lord gave them the assurance, though, of everlasting union, because your God, your Guru, will always be with you. In circumstances where the Guru's physical body departs, on many occasions I have had to give their devotees the assurance, no, you're not being left behind. This Guru will always be with you. And so, Sugriva now comes in. He comes in, of course, with a host of the monkey and bear followers, all intent on giving themselves over to Rama. And the Lord put it to Sugriva that he and his devotee are one and the same. This is the tradition. A devotee unites in mystic union with his chosen ideal, her chosen ideal. That is the culmination of real devotion. And leaving the devotee behind, he would not enter Parampadam, the supreme abode. What about Vibhishana? Vibhishana was already in Ayodhya, eager to join his Redeemer Rama. But Rama gave him a different duty. He was to be on earth, ruling Lanka, as long as there were aspirants seeking salvation. Sattva-guna is discharging this holy duty forever and ever. And Anjaneya, Hanuman, the super devotee and servant, was there seeking inseparable union with Rama, his complete idol and ideal. But a cosmic function was different for him. He was to be the Chiranjeeva, the Chiranjeevi on earth, the permanent citizen on earth. So wherever this story, this Ramayana, is being studied, then the invisible presence is there, not only of Hanuman, but Rama, thereby sanctifying the place and the people. And so Anjaneya really is the incarnation of the Guru. And as such, cannot vacate the world with his gentlemanly air, after you please. So with multitudes of devotees, Rama marches to the river Sharayu, bathed in it, and converted the physical bodies, all of those, into spiritual bodies, and descended to Vaikuntha, the abode of Vishnu from whence he came. A locomotive engine is reaching the destination itself, draws also and takes with it a long train of carriages loaded with passengers. In this way, an incarnation of God functions in the same way, and he carries the divine abode multitudes of men and women burdened with the cares and sorrows of the world, says the prophet of the modern age, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. Just to remind you, the scheme of the story didn't start with Rama. It didn't end with Rama. It is an eternal truth that is working subjectively in the minds of all souls struggling for self-emulation. So the glory of this story that is now concluded consists in projecting objective personalities embodying the various forces at work in mankind. And that just as space or akasha is the common background of everything that exists, the Paramatman, or the cosmic reality that is called Rama, is the innermost core and basis of mankind. And Sita is the Jivatman, the individual self. What she is to Rama, the Jivatman is to Paramatman. She is eternally married to Rama. Even so, the individual self has its being in Paramatman. It is Vishnu who incarnates as Rama, we should remember, but he also incarnates as Bharata, Lakshmana, and Shatrughna. And though they are four beings in four different forms, they are one in spirit. And in the same way, the cosmic reality reveals itself as Shiva, Vishnu, Ambika, Ganesh, Kumara, and so on. Knowledge of any one of them amounts to the knowledge of the one ultimate reality. And then we have Vali and Sugriva. They are the representatives of earthly brothers. And sometimes misunderstanding separates them, but it's only a passing phase in their career. And then there are the three dispositions in man, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And Sattva promotes a pure life, Rajas rouses up passion and lust, and Tamas is given to sleep and inertia. And among the three brothers in Lanka, Vibhishana is constituted of Sattva. And he therefore opposes the evil of his brother Ravana, and Kumbhakarna is made of Tamas. And therefore is given to inordinate sleep and rapacious eating. Ravana is the embodiment, of course, of Rajas. And so he represents the licentious mind owning 5 organs of perception and 5 organs of action. These 10 organs are allegorically called his 10 heads. Now, by now you realize that this wasn't just a historical account, but entirely allegorical account of spiritual life and how to overcome difficulties. Ravana, the wicked mind, alienates Sita because the Jivatman is alienated from Rama, the Paramatman, and tries to impose the impossible relationship with it. Whereas Sita, the Jivatman, ignores the evil mind, which is called Ravana, and pangs for the reunion with Rama, the Paramatman. And the Guru, or the spiritual master, is the person who brings about reunion between Jivatman and Paramatman. He is necessarily a person of sterling character, irrespective of his origin. And so we see Hanuman is the personified Guru. He searches and finds out the pining Sita, or the competent Jivatman, and assures her reunion with the Lord. So the Ram-Ravana warfare is actually the conflict between virtue and wickedness. And wickedness is very, very tenacious. Still, the former will prevail in the end. Jivatman gains yoga with Paramatman. So in this way, we should understand that this story of Rama is enacted by all the Jivatmans, all of us, wending our way towards perfection. And that finally, after over 2 years, is the conclusion of the Ramayana. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.